All right, you guys, we are going to go through and do Unit 4, Test 2, Remediation. This one was all about factoring and quadratics, all right? So the very first one, it says factor negative 2x squared plus 8x plus 154. Now, here I would use, based on my answer choices, I would use the x method. Now, 154 is a big number, so I'm going to see if negative 2, 8, and 154 are all divisible by 2. So I'm going to take my calculator and type in 154 divided by 2, and it is. And I know 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I'm going to pull out a negative 2 because I want my a value to be positive. X squared plus 4x plus 77. So I'm going to have a negative 2 at the outside of all of my answer choices. So A is not going to be a good answer for us. Now I'm going to take my y equals, and I'm going to type in, clear all that stuff out. I'm going to type in 77 divided by x, because I need the factors of 77. Well, first of all, Ms. Ingram, you're skipping ahead. You need to do the x method, a times c and b. My b value is 4. My a value is 1. 1 times 77 is 77. Now, I need two factors of 77 that are going to add to give me 4. So I'm going to go to my calculator, and I'm going to look across. I'm going to look in the positives first. See if there's anything. Ooh, I have 7 and 11. And if I add those together, I'm going to get 18. So I know one of those has to be negative. So I'm going to have a negative 7 and 11. If I add these two together, it's going to give me 4. If I tried to put the negative with the 11, that would have given me negative 4, and that's not going to work. That's not going to be okay. So negative 2 on the outside. I'm going to have x squared minus 7x. Then I'm going to have plus 11x plus 77 to close everything out. My red group is going to be first. I'm going to find my greatest common factor here. My greatest common factor of x squared and negative 7 is x. I'm going to be left with x minus 7. And you can double check your answers here. X times x is x squared. X times negative 7 is negative 7x. Now, I know that this is going to be the same on the other side. And you can think about this two different ways. You can think, what times x is going to give me 11x? Or what times negative 7 is going to give me positive 77? And that's going to be negative 11. So my final answer, I take my outside terms, and they become 1. And then these two groups become 1. And it doesn't matter the order here. You can have negative 11 on the back end. You can have negative 7 on the front end. Does not matter at all. All right. And the only one that seems to match here, trying to see if I did something wrong, because I don't see my answer choice. Negative 2 x squared. Oh, Miss Ingram, I know what I did. Here, if I factored out a negative 2, that also means that this needs to be negative and this needs to be negative. Meaning, this should have been negative 4, positive 7, and negative 11. Let's go ahead and let's just reset. All right, so this should be positive 7x, and this should be negative 11. See, you guys, and this is why you always need to double check yourselves. This should be negative 11. All right, when I factor out a negative 2 here, that also means that I factor out a negative 2 here and a negative 2 here. That's why our signs have changed, okay? Because a negative times a negative is a positive. Negative times negative is positive. That's why these two signs right here need to be negative. All right, don't make that mistake. It's probably the mistake that you made actually on your test. All right, let's see how this changes our answers. So now, because this is positive, that means that this is going to be positive. So negative 11 here, that's going to be plus. Is it? Hold on, let's think. Oh yeah, because this is going to be negative. Let's think about this. Negative 77. Oh no, that's going to have to be negative 11 in order for this to work. So negative 11 times x is negative 11x. Negative 11 times 7 is negative 77. So I still should have x minus 11 and x plus 7. So that is why B is the answer choice there. All right, that's probably where you went wrong on your test. So it's very important that when you factor out a negative, that means that the inside terms also need to be negative as well. All right, number 2, solving by the square root method, using the square root method. That means I need to get x squared by itself. So I'm going to rewrite this kind of over here. 49 x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. Add 9 to both sides. Then I'm going to divide by 49. X squared is equal to 9 over 49. Then to undo a squared, I'm going to take the square root. Square root this side, square root this side. The square root of 9 is going to be 3. The square root of 49 is going to be 7. Both of these are what we call perfect squares. All right, perfect squares. So positive and negative 3/7. C. All right, the graph. All right, here, what is the correct quadratic formula, or excuse me, quadratic function for this parabola? There's 2 different ways that you could solve this one. I think this one's supposed to be a 1 right here. Right there in that answer choice. You can look at the intercepts. You can look at the intercepts of -1 and +3. And you would choose, remember that h value, that x value is always going to be the opposite. So the opposite of -1 is going to be +1. The opposite of +3 is going to be -3. And that's one that you would choose. You would choose +1 and -3. Which turns out to be B. Or you guys, you can take your calculator. You can plug in each of these functions, x plus 3, x minus 1. And you can either look at the table or you can look at the graph and see what the graph looks like. And that graph is shifted over this way, meaning its x-intercepts are going to be here at -3 and at +1, which is the complete opposite of this, okay? I should be at -1 and +3. This one's at +1 and -3. All right, that's 2 different methods that you can use for that graph. All right. Number 4, we're using the, oh my goodness. That's all right. I have this slide. We're using the quadratic formula for this. So the quadratic formula is on our formula sheet. I also know the song, -b plus or minus square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And we need an a value, a b value, and a c value. All right, not a as in the variables, but as in the coefficients in front of those variables. A is always going to be, it's always ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, I don't have a c on this side, and on this side I have 0. Even if you subtract 0, how rude.
Jordarius Boston, please come to the front office. Jordarius Boston, please come to the front office.
Well, that's really unfortunate and actually kind of embarrassing. So if you're friends with him, you should probably tell him you should have been at the front office. All right, so my real function is a squared minus 7a plus 0 or minus 0 is equal to 0. So my a value here is 1. My b value here is negative 7. And my c value is 0. So when we plug these in into the formula, negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So two negatives next to each other become positive, so 7 plus or minus. Now, anything times 0, you guys, is just always going to be 0, so that goes away. So negative 7 squared is just 49 divided by 2. Square root of 49 is 7, so 7 plus or minus 7 all over 2. And we can break this up two different ways. We can say 7 plus 7 over 2, or 7 minus 7 over 2. Well, 7 minus 7 over 2 is just going to be 0. 7 plus 7 is 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So my answer should be 7 and 0, which is D. All right, last one on page number 1 is using the square root method, meaning get x squared by itself. So I'm going to add 15 to both sides. X squared is equal to 64. And then to undo a square, we take the square root of both sides. And remember, x is going to equal, remember this is a perfect square, and it's always going to be positive or negative 8. Because remember, negative 8 times negative 8 is also positive 64, as well as 8 times 8 is 64. So no longer do we just have just positive 8, it's positive and negative 8, which is A. All right, flippity-doo-dah the page. All right, number 6. Number 6 was a very missed question when it came to my particular test, Miss Ingram's test. So here, I'm going to use the X method. The X method is one way you could use. You could also use a quadratic formula. Does not matter. All right, A times C, so 1 times negative 60 is negative 60. My B value is 11. So I'm going to go to my calculator, and I'm going to type in negative 60 divided by X to figure out what my factors are. And I'm looking for things that I can highlight across in order to get positive 11. So looking positive 11, looks like this one, but for a negative 15, but I don't want the 15 to be negative. I want the 4 to be negative. So negative 4 and 15, because when I add these two together, that's going to give me positive 11. If I did it based on my calculator, negative 15 and 4, that's going to give me negative 11. And I don't want negative 11, I want positive 11. So here we go. X squared minus 4x plus 15x minus 60. This is my first group. This is my second group. So my common factor of x squared and negative 4x is x. What I'm left with is x minus 4, and I can double check that. X times x is x squared. X times negative 4 is negative 4x. Then my common factor between these two is going to be 15, because x minus 4 is going to be my next group, because these two always match. And that kind of makes sense if you think about it, because x times negative 4 is negative 60, or 15 times x is 15x. I'm going to group these two together. X plus 15, x minus 4. Now, that's not an answer choice, because when I look at my answers, I see x is equal to. I don't see parentheses. That tells you you need to take x plus 15 and set it equal to 0. And we practiced this. We practiced this in class. That way, you get x by itself. Then you can subtract 15. X is equal to negative 15, or you can add 4. x is equal to 4. So that is why D is the correct answer here. Now, a different way on how to do this one is using the quadratic formula. If you use the quadratic formula for this, you will always get what x is equal to. All right, speaking of the quadratic formula, to find the real number of solutions, I need to know what the discriminant is. And that's b squared minus 4ac, and that's where we get that from the quadratic formula. So let's make sure this is ax squared minus bx plus c. I have everything over on one side. So b squared negative 14 squared minus 4 times 1 times 49. So I'm going to plug this into the calculator because I don't know my 14 squares by heart. Negative 14 squared. Make sure you plug that into parentheses. And that gives me 196. And then what is negative 4 times 1 times 49? Oh, negative 196. So I get 0. So when I get 0, that tells me I only have one real solution. All right, one real solution. Because that tells me that my parabola is sitting on the x-axis. So if I'm thinking about what this looks like, I don't know where my parabola is, but that means that my vertex is sitting right there on the x-axis. It only crosses the x-axis one time. Now, number 8 is very similar to this, but you need to add 10 on both sides before you do anything. X squared minus x plus 10. You use the same format, b squared minus 4ac, but you have to make sure everything is set to one side first. You have to make sure everything is set equal to 0 to find the discriminant. So here we go. B squared minus 4 times a times c. So that's going to give me 1 minus 40, and that's negative 39. And when this is negative, when I have a negative discriminant, I have no real solutions. That tells me I have that algebra 2 problem, I have that 11th grade problem, I stop and I don't do anything else. I have 0 real solutions. Real solutions. Number 9, a good method for this one is going to be the x method because I'm already in parentheses here. So let's do that. A times c, my a value is 1, times c is 77. My b value is 18. So again, going back to the calculator, typing in 77 divided by x. Going to go to the table, and I'm looking to see if, sorry you guys, my husband is texting me. All right, I'm looking to see if I can find 18 across. All right, 18 across. Ooh, and it looks like I've got 7 and 11. All right, 7 and 11, both of those, if I add those together, I get 18. So 7 and 11. So when I do this, x squared plus 7x plus 11x plus 77. This is going to be my first group. This is going to be my second group. My greatest common factor between these two here is an x, and I'm going to be left with x plus 7. And that makes sense because x times x is x squared. X times 7 is 7x. And this is going to be the exact same group. These are always going to match. That's why it's factored by grouping. They're the same group. Then what times x gives me 11x, or what times 7 gives me 77, and that's going to be 11. Take my two outside terms, become one group. So x plus 11, x plus 7, b should be our answer. Now, number 10 for me was also another missed question. You have to factor out the greatest common factor. All right, the biggest factors, the greatest common factors that they have. So let's first start out with 10 and 100. So the greatest common factors between 10 and 100 is both 10. And then x squared and x both have, here, let me underline those, x squared and x both have an x in common. All right, x times what gives me x squared? Well, that's going to be x. Here, I don't have any x's left over because x times 1 is going to give me x. But 10 times what gives me 100? Well, that's going to be 10. And that's why C is the best answer choice for that one. You have to make sure you pull out the greatest common factor, that G part, greatest common factor. Number 11 is a step in factor by grouping. You just take these two outside terms and they become 1, 2 minus J, 4 minus Y should be our answer. Because these are already the same group, that means that it's a step by factor by grouping. All right, don't miss this one just because it looks different. All right, it's just one of those certain steps in factor by grouping. Now, I look at my answer choices for number 12, and I see x is equal to. For this one, I'm going to do the quadratic formula. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Oh, Miss Ingram, look at me. I missed the negative b. Scratch that out. X is equal to negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That one. Oh, I cannot believe that is so embarrassing. Look at me. All right, my a value is 6. My b value is negative 36. My c value is 54. So here we go. Negative b plus or minus square roots b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. And you guys, all we're going to do is we're going to plug this into the calculator, okay? 36 plus or minus the square root. I don't know negative 36 squared, so I'm going to type it in. I'm going to type in 36 squared. Woo, that's a big number. Negative 4 times 6 times 54. Negative 1080 all over 12. Now I'm going to type this in exactly the way that it is. I'm going to type in the square root button. Then I'm going to type 1296 minus 1080. Ooh, and that's not a perfect square. So let's figure this out. What did Miss Ingram do wrong? 1296 minus 1080 is 216. Negative 36 squared minus 4 times 6 times 54. Oh, look at her. She typed in 5 here. Look, Miss Ingram's making all these mistakes when she should have typed in 6. See, these are honest mistakes that y'all should have made. Or y'all could have made too. So this is 1296. So minus 1296. Well, that's just going to give me 0. So that's not going to work. 36 divided by 12 is going to be my answer. So 36 divided by 12 is 3. So 3 should be our answer here for my function, my quadratic function, which is C. Make sure you plug in numbers correctly because that's, kind of important here. All right. Number 13. I don't want to read this one because words hurt my eyes. So I'm going to look at what the question says. It says, use the graph to evaluate f of 1. So f of 1 is right here. What is the y value here? My y value is 25. B. Ooh, I hate this. Ugh, all these words. Oh my gosh, that hurts my eyes. So I'm going to get out my highlighters for this. And I'm really going to highlight and underline things that are important. So I've got this function, boom. All of this, T seems to be important. I'm going to need to label a T value. I'm going to need to label a V value because it says V right here. V is velocity. T is time. H is going to be initial height. And then A is acceleration. And it already tells me what that is. A is going to be 32. All right, now let's read the next one. A baseball player hits a baseball 4.45 feet above the ground with an initial value of 98 feet per second. Write a function for the scenario. So initial velocity, that sounds very familiar to V. There's that one, 98 feet per second. And then a player hits a baseball 4.45 feet above the ground. So feet above the ground, that's going to be height. So 4.45 feet, which means I don't know what my T value is, which makes sense because if I look here, it means that T is not going to be here. It's going to be inside the equation. So all I'm doing is I'm taking each one of these and I'm plugging it into my formula. So first things first, 98, T I don't know. 4.45, so plus 4.45. That minus 0.5 stays the same, 32. And then I don't know what T is, so T squared. All right, and that's it. That's all I'm doing for this function. So I'm looking for 98T. All right, so A is not there and D is not there because this one says negative. And then the differences that I see between these two are negative and positive. You can't have negative height, by the way. That would be impossible. All right, number 5 says, how long will it take for the ball to hit the ground? Ooh, so let's plug this into y equals 98t or 98x, I don't have t's, plus 4.25 minus 0.5, 32, t or x squared. I'm going to go to the table and I'm going to look at this for a second. All right, so here, remember, I start at 4.45 because that's how tall my baseball player is. He hits the ball that high, and it goes up, 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 up here to 3 seconds, and then at 3 seconds, it's going back down, and it goes down in between 6 and 7, right? So at 6 seconds, it's 16.25 feet in the air. At 7 seconds, it's at negative 93. So the only one that kind of matches that is going to be D, even though it's in between 6 and 7 seconds. This one doesn't look like it's a question, but maybe it's talking about find the vertex or something. You know what? Since it doesn't have a question, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this into y equals negative 4, x plus 4, x plus 6. And I'm going to see if any of these points are on this parabola here. All right, so I'm looking for 5, 4. That's definitely not it. 4, 6. That's definitely not it because mine's at 4, negative 320. Let's look at the negatives. Negative 4, 0, so that's not it. So it has to be negative 5, 4. Oh, and I bet you it was talking about the vertex because I see a pattern now. So the vertex, remember, is the middle of that pattern. 0, negative 12, negative 32, 0, negative 12, negative 32. So that means that that's the vertex. All right, number 17, last question. So refer to the question graph. So I guess number 13. Interpret the value f of 1 in context of the problem. So f of 1 was 25. So what does that mean? Remember, our x's up here at this one, x's was time. and then here was feet. So the water balloon was dropped from like 40 something or 30, it says 38 feet high. So at 1 second, how far was the water balloon dropped? It was at 25 feet. So at 1 second, the water balloon was at a height of 25. So if you are still with me and you watch the whole video all the way through, what I want you to do is to take your highlighter, whatever color your heart desires. Maybe you have a color pencil or whatever. I want you to highlight Unit 4, Test 2 Remediation. If you highlight Unit 4, Test 2 Remediation, you will earn 5 extra points on your test. All right, 5 extra points on your test. Can't go wrong with that, okay? 5 extra points on your retest. All right, thank you guys for sticking with me and for being awesome. All right, catch you on the flip side.